my audience, my note card. Did you know that Texas accounts for about 35% of all United States executions? This is in contrast of the Texas population sitting at 7% of the total country population. Texas and the utility of the death penalty in the past has closely resembled countries that have been associated with tyrannical government, such as Saudi Arabia and China. Although punishing people with a death sentence has been habitually used ever since we can remember, it was not first codified as law until the 18th century. Since then, capital punishment has remained a controversial topic. For those who have committed serious crimes, the death sentence would be the response in terms of a disciplinary action. Today, 28 U.S. states still sanction capital punishment through various methods, most commonly by the use of lethal injection. The death penalty is an inhumane way of dealing with serious crimes. For me, as an international student studying in the United States, many political aspects have sparked curiosity in me. For many of my free topic essays, I've chosen repeatedly to do capital punishment and further research the topic, as the support for it has always bewildered me. Continuously, I found that the cons of implementation vastly outweigh the pros. As we are all students living in the United States and studying in Texas, the hot spot for capital punishment, it's important for us to all recognize the consequences of this disciplinary action. Many people formulate political opinions with biases and do little educating themselves in regarding political topics. I, for one, had no opinion on the matter until I did research, which opened up my eyes to the senselessness of the practice. Ultimately, research shows that there are more practical alternatives of criminal punishment available, meaning the practice of the death penalty should be abolished in every single state. The utilization of the death penalty has proven to incite expensive financing, a lack of criminal deterrence, and the risk of wrongful execution. Well, now are going to discuss about how these factors are problems. A common belief is executing prisoners rather than lifetime incarceration will save the government a lot of money. This is false. The death penalty is expensive. The financing that goes into court costs and actual execution tend to add up, making lifetime incarceration a cheaper alternative. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, the state of California, which is not very popular in the practice of the capital punishment, was spending about $137 million a year on the death penalty, and this number was compared to lifetime incarceration at 11.5 million. Here we can see on the graph, since 1978, California has spent only $1 billion on incarceration and a total of $4.6 billion on the death penalty. The spending is majority towards trial costs, but it also includes the federal and state appeals. This highlights that lifetime sentences financing shouldn't be an issue. Another common misconception is that capital punishment will deter crime. However, those states that have the highest rates of criminal execution, Texas, Florida, and Georgia, correlate to also having the highest murder rates. You would think that states where the death penalty is actively exercised, murder rates would decline, but this isn't true. We can see here on the graph below, murder rates from 1990 to 2018, with death penalty states in red and non-death penalty states in the blue. Oh, we were supposed to switch the graph.
Each year, the death penalty states demonstrated much higher rates. Nat Hentoff, an American historian and author of many books on civics, reiterated this by pulling from the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology, where it actually revealed that 70 of America's leading top criminologists actually don't believe that the death penalty deters murder rates. In addition to Hentoff's belief in the death penalty being insufficient criminal deterrence, he points out that many people are wrongfully charged with this quote. He says that increasingly men on death row are proven innocent with DNA evidence. Ultimately, this means that we have countless victims executed due to error charges, which do happen from time to time. You can see that here in the graph. It shows different reasons for false convictions on death row cases. Eyewitness errors seem to be an issue in many of the false allegations. We can achieve restitution for a wrongful life sentence, but putting someone to death is irreversible. Expenses, lack of deterrence, and the chance of executing innocent people are just few of the factors on why the death penalty should not be used. For those who are prepared to advocate for this law, I will now be discussing what it looks like on different levels. In terms of nationwide views, the American population is somewhat split in their support of the death penalty. However, this legislative matter is rarely discussed on political platforms today. I believe if legislators were able to incorporate their ideas on the death penalty into their domestic policies, conversations regarding capital punishment can be ignited, thus changing how we handle serious criminal punishment in the future. Similarly to government laws, changes will be achieved through provoking thought on the topic and active conversation in a community setting. Many areas around the country will tolerate capital punishment but forego choosing to implement it. If this is the case in your community, consider proposing abandoning the practice altogether. If not, take part in the protests that commonly transpire outside of these specific trials. In respect to the advocacy for the abolishment of the death penalty at an individual level, it's detrimental that we eliminate any pre-biases we have going in doing our research. Being able to visualize the full picture and effectively weigh the pros and cons will guide you to formulating an appropriate opinion. That is not necessarily in terms of what values you may have. Just note that even though the death penalty might not directly affect you, it's life-changing for criminals, victims, families, and correctional officers worldwide. Ultimately, research shows that there are more practical alternatives of criminal punishment, meaning that the death penalty should be abolished. Expensive funding, lack of criminal deterrence, and the risk of wrongful execution are just some of the factors in the long list of why it should be gone. I urge all of you guys who have not fully been convinced on what I've said today to do their own research. You're going to find not very many studies that actually support the use of the death penalty. Instigate discussion within your community and try to raise awareness of the consequences that this form of punishment has. This speech I've done today has not been an emotional cry that killing people is wrong. My stance on the matter is purely based off of sufficiency, and I hope that you guys have all recognized that. I hope that you've retained some of the ideas I've discussed and possibly call upon them in the future if and when politicians decide that capital punishment is a concern that needs to be addressed again. Thank you.